What happens when two genres of games that hardly go hand in hand meet, and at the hands of a developer that never dared so much to experiment? A game that, on paper, sounds awful, and yet it turned out to be another flawed masterpiece. Hi, I'm Zodiac TV, and I love Soulsborne games and roguelikes, like Isaac, Dead Cells, Curse of the Dead Gods, Risk of Rain, and others. So, of course, when I came to know Nightreign was about to be a mix of my two favorite genres, my expectations went through the roof, as well as my excitement.
It's Elden, right?
Looked like Elden. Like I don't think it's gonna be a... As an avid gamer, I tend to spend a decent amount of time on some games and then spend an unhealthy amount of time on others. And at this point, it might come to no surprise that I have this amount of hours in Elden Ring. To some, this might not be a lot, but it's still pretty high for my standards. Plus, I like to consume other people's content in my free time to either hear their opinions, see their reactions, or even delve into cut content, mechanic analysis, debunking, and so on. I also consider this to be part of the time you spend on a video game, because you are spending time thinking and informing yourself about it. If I were to count all the hours I spent watching Elden Ring related content, I would probably end up having above 2000 hours. If we were to also consider the hours I spent thinking about it while doing something else, it would probably duplicate that value. Elden Ring gave me that feeling of obsession when it came out, that feeling of I could be playing it right now, but instead I have to go to work, or I could be playing it right now, but instead I have to cook. It was addicting in a way that it made me thirst for it every time I would close the game for the day. But, as many games, the addiction ran out in some months, and ended up playing other games after completing all achievements. Shortly after, another game, a roguelike, came out in early access, in early 2023, called Ravenswatch. This became my next obsession really quickly. In this game, you play as heroes or villains from folklore, novels or fictions, while going through levels plagued with eldritch horrors and corrupted versions of more fictional characters and creatures. The more you fight, the more you level up and unlock power-ups for your character. The game's runs are organized in 3 segments, each one has a differently generated landscape with objectives that give you specific rewards from a pool of items, buffs and money, with the occasional horde or boss fight in between locations. And every segment is split in 3 day-night cycles, in which you have to go around and gather loot to level up, become stronger, and then fight a huge Lovecraftian horror to continue. While you got a lot of time, it's often advised to keep running until the timer runs out. My hype died out a bit faster because the release in early access was a bit lacking in content, and the progressively longer runs with updates kinda diminished my interest for it, as I like to hop in and hop out rather quickly from games depending whenever I have stuff to do or I'm playing with friends and they don't have the time to invest for a single run that can last between 70 and 80 minutes, hardly less. I still enjoy whenever they update the game, since it's a lot of fun with friends and even solo. The game was my obsession for a whole year and a half anyway, and whenever I got someone to play with, I would ask them if they would have loved to do a quick run. I also often ended up thinking to myself, man, I would love to have a game like this made by From. Most of what I played in my experience was not bad, indie games are awesome, but I always loved the feel that you get from playing a FromSoft game. However, I wonder if you guys noticed something, like a pattern of some sort. You pick a pre-made character with unique abilities that can level up, there is a decent skill level required to win, you go around in a 3-day cycle, each chapter has its own final boss, gathering loot and upgrades during the day. This is why I was so excited about Nightreign. Somehow, they managed to mix my two hyperfixations that were literally back-to-back in my gaming experience in a game that to most felt like a fever dream, something that was not supposed to exist in the first place. The idea of having a game that was pretty much tailored to my interests, out of nowhere, made by my favorite development house, I could not have been happier. I waited 6 months, from announcement to release, counting down the days as they went by. And the closer we were getting to it, the harder it was to think about it positively. Will it be good? Will it be another Dark Souls 2 situation, where the community is split between loving it and hating it? Will it even be fun being so different from the Souls genre? From has never been good with experimenting. Usually, their new ideas always ended up being half-baked and anticlimactic at best. Think about the multiplayer areas in Dark Souls 2, for example. Being areas filled with enemies and reusing bosses from other parts of the game. Of course, they're considered to be played in multiplayer, but you can't deny that even that can't save the sloppiness of those areas, considering the rewards you get are often disappointing or not worth the effort. Another one that comes to mind are the numerous dungeons in Elden Ring. As much as I can praise Elden Ring, I confirm that the unique dungeons that exist in the game are just a bunch, and most of them are just repeated assets with some enemies in it. They always try to find a way to make them unique, but it's never enough to add necromancers, or a pool of rot, or certain traps to break the monotony. Of course, they sometimes even got insane results while trying new things out, like Sekiro, which is completely alien to their own formula, or the weapon skills in Dark Souls 3, that became so beloved that they had to return in Elden Ring, and thank God they did, and were even improved upon, which makes them even better. So, seeing Nightreign, a fast-paced exploration game with unique characters that have unique skills and ultimates, was really discouraging, as the game felt like they were mixing something in a lab, trying to find out the perfect solution to make the most out-of-place placebo pill while we're waiting for Elden Ring 2. Which, by the way, I think will never happen in the first place. But fast forward to today. Nightreign is out, people have been playing it, I have been playing it. What is my opinion on it after waiting 6 months and avoiding any kind of spoiler as much as I could? It's different than I expected, in a way that I never thought. First of all, I want to start with the Shrouded roundtable hold. It's the roundtable. You have been here before, in Elden Ring, and it was your safe haven, your lobby, where you can upgrade your equipment, change your appearance, get bosses' weapons, and get laid. It's built to feel epic, like you're the hero, and everyone else is giving you the tools to be one. It's not your home, it's your base. In Nightreign, however, it does feel like home. There's the Iron Manual, which says to attend to your needs. There's the manual to learn about the game. There's the best character in the game, the little pot friend selling you emotes and relics, and you can also interact with all the other characters and learn their backstories.
I am always ready to fight.
Careful, Drake. The night is nothing to be afraid of.
The whole place is where your comrades, your friends, and brothers in arms are, where your victories are celebrated, and where your story unfolds. You're not a pawn in a lake of pawns. You're one of the staple fighters against the night. And you're not alone in this, ever. The music also conveys that, being a welcoming tune every time you come back from an expedition, or, if you're coming home from school or work, for example, can act as a soothing moment for your tired bones and brain before actually booting up the first run of the day. Elden Ring manages to succeed in this feeling in a specific fight in the DLC, which a lot of people found awfully hard, unfair and unbalanced, but for me, that specific moment was probably one of the highest FromSoft moments ever made. While simple, it gave you a feel of belongingness, of having a focused and real purpose in mind. The Shrouded roundtable does the same, in a way that it gives you purpose, but also makes you feel like there's no threat. You can take the time that you need to learn what you need to learn and enjoy the moment. The priestess, the Benial, the little pot guy, they will always be there to cheer you up and make you feel at ease. The character designs are great. They fit the FromSoft formula well and manage to be unique at the same time. They don't look alien, but also feel familiar to someone who played Soulsborne games already, and they look appealing even to someone that never played the games. Everyone has their own strengths and weaknesses, and they all balance each other out very nicely, which is why usually a full team of the same character struggles more than a fully varied squad, where you'd have a bruiser or a tank, while the others fill DPS or support roles. It makes everyone feel useful and makes you feel like even if you might not be the one doing damage, you know they can't make it without you. It's a cooperative game, no one gets left behind. Everyone is essential and must be at their best, otherwise the win will be a harsher battle than needed. Although some 3 of the same character comps can actually be very effective, like this 3 Raiders run I made on stream where we demolished Gladius and pretty much everything that stood in our way. The fast-paced gameplay, which usually does not really match with the Soulsborne formula, works perfectly here. You have this continuous sense of rush and dopamine that you get because you have to upgrade, you have to beat bosses, you have to grab loot and level up, and you need to be quick about it because the days are short. Like, short. You run from one place to another. If you're not fast enough, after 2 locations the rain will be closing on you soon, and then you have to spend even more time running than actually gathering loot. Speaking of loot, I think having the idea of being able to get any kind of item from base Elden Ring is awesome. It's one of those times where you'd say it does not make sense to loot from a Deathrite bird, the fire giant's braid, but this is the whole core of the game. Not everything has to make sense. This is why this game exists in the first place. It almost feels like the devs said fuck it and went all in with the most random ideas they had, made a working video game out of the assets they used for their previous works. The enemies, as an Elden Ring player, are not hard to refresh in my muscle memory. Most of the enemies are reused from the previous game, so that's one less thing you have to learn. To some, just like the weapons, might feel a bit redundant. Same enemies, same weapons, same locations. This whole game is a huge asset flip. And I'll be honest, I thought of this when the game was still unreleased. And I totally understand those who think the people should not buy it because it's not unique enough or it's just reuse assets. It's not a wrong take. The game reuses a lot of models, movesets, animations, and sounds from both base Elden Ring and other FromSoft games. It's not a new thing for From Software either, as Elden Ring itself reused assets from older Souls games. However, I want to toss a coin to this technique, which is actually more common than people care to think about. Let's make the example of Metal Gear Solid Delta. While the game looks stunning, a lot of the assets in-game are recycled. They will be keeping the same voice acting from the original 2005 game, same with most animations, to both save money and time, and deliver a great product for everyone who's interested in it. While Nightreign does it more than the average AA game, the repurposed assets are implemented in a way and in a gameplay style that is so different than the original material that I don't think it justifies the negativity it receives, especially for a game that is way cheaper than your usual big release and maintains the same quality and polish level of the average FromSoft release. They also included some Dark Souls related content to make everyone happy and probably try to boost sales. Trust me, they convinced me even more with it and got some good reactions to them the first time I saw them. Okay! Gaping Jack. This is also a way to actually refresh and update the recycled content and adapt it to a multiplayer game. Most of the bosses in the game, both from base game Elden Ring and the Dark Souls titles, received new moves and behavioral changes to match the different style, which makes them challenging even for veterans that would be surprised whenever they have to deal with them. On the other hand, I'm sad that all the main characters' armor sets cannot be found in base Elden Ring. Their design goes so hard I would definitely love to wear them, especially Welder's armor is so cool! Fanboying aside, I do feel like the gameplay was a huge experiment to see how well their formula would work if retouched for a slightly faster style of fighting. And I'll be honest, I'm pleasantly surprised how nice it feels to play. It makes you feel like you can do everything, as you're super fast, you can climb walls, there is no fall damage, most enemies starting day 2 will easily be one-shotted by whatever you're wielding, compared to the usual level ups you get as a normal Souls protagonist. Here you actually feel the progression through those 30 minutes of gameplay, where you go from struggling with the first camp to just clear everything with one spell. I also want to talk about how you can find almost every single weapon from base Elden Ring randomly around. I once completed a run wielding both Lusat and Azure staves as Recluse, items that you usually end up getting between mid and late game in the original title, which also made me realize how convenient it is even for base Elden Ring. You could find a weapon you really like in Nightreign, may it be a common but rarely used weapon, or a very specific legendary or rare weapon, and it may convince you to do a run with that specific tool. And it's not limited to just melee, as it can also include spells or consumables, something you usually won't use. In Nightreign, you end up having to use it, and it might be a fun time, and convince you to go back to Elden Ring and try it in their original fashion. I am honestly loving halberds using Guardian, and honestly never really tried them out. I will give them a go next time I play the game for sure. It gives you a fresh, new way to approach fights that you usually will do with your usual comfy stuff, so it's great to see a possible different view for them. Speaking of new, I want to talk about something that is probably the peak of this game more than the gameplay itself: the music. I am someone who believes music is a key element in an interactive experience where you are one with the main character. It's something that the Kingdom Hearts and Final Fantasy series left me while growing up, where melodies and musical themes can tell a story just by listening to them.
It's the dying gasps of like the last of its kind almost. But it's done through acceptance and heroicism, and it's like, I know I'm going to go down, but I'm going to do everything in my power to take you with me. There's tons of doubling in there. The piano is so front and center. The chorus, the violins, they're all doubling the brass, re-emphasizing that. It really does feel like the dying. The song is about, like, you know, there's a poem that I was thinking about while this song was playing, like, do not go quietly into that good night, and you know, let fire burn and whatever, and it feels to me like that is this, but in musical form, where it's like, I'm not going to allow myself to be defeated without, even though I'm at my last breath, I am going to choose how I'm going to go out.
I am not a composer myself, so I can't give an in-depth analysis of the soundtrack itself, but I consider these tracks to be on the same level, if not better, than most of the base Elden Ring tracks. Honestly, I found the bosses' themes to be the greatest pieces of the whole game. Personally, I love Fulgor and Caligo's themes, but everything that was included in the soundtrack just felt amazing from start to finish. I have become fond of the Shrouded Roundtable Hold theme. As I mentioned before, I found it really welcoming and really makes me feel a moment of respite before jumping in another run, where I get hit with the Limvel theme, which is insanely hyper every time I hear it. My god! And the fights that go with them, the Night Lords. Well, the Night Lords are something. Some are awesome, some are questionable, but I don't think they're bad. As single-player bosses, absolutely awful to fight against. As a team, the fights become epic and make your heart race. I had a fight against Fulgor where both my teammates fell, I could not revive them, and had no more healing, so I just had to try it at the moment. Let's go!
Nice.
Let's go, Bobby, you did it. Let's
Good
go.
shit.
Let's go! Again, it's the dopamine rush you get from this game that it makes you want more, which is also fueled by the speed it takes to just finish your run and jump in another one. You get sent back to the round table, hit play, and jump back in a matter of seconds. The lobby system really improves this game by a long shot. I also feel like this whole different style of game, that coincidentally was made at the same time as Duskbloods, is to mostly improve on one thing: the netcode. Usually, in Souls games, whenever you were to face someone online or summon cooperators for boss fights, you'd notice there is a good half a second of delay for every single action your multiplayer buddy or opponent performs. On console, it's not as noticeable, but it's still there. On PC, this is caused by the easy anti-cheat system which, through its processes and safety checks, has to control every single input and byte sent from the other players, actively delaying every interaction between the two, but still registering all of them, no matter how delayed. It's jarring and annoying, as it can easily hinder your experience and enjoyment of the titles. Another thing that a lot of people have complained about, me included, is the sign system, which has been a thing since Demon's Souls, From's first Soulsborne title. The main way to engage in jolly cooperation will be to look on the ground for a summon sign, touch it, and summon a player to your world to help you with a nearby boss. After the fight, the summon has to leave the world, since you don't need them anymore. I found this system fascinating when I was younger, as it did not allow you to invite people directly, and was promoting playing with random people in need of help. But I've grown tired of it since I started playing more with friends and mutuals. Having to summon for every single boss fight when you're trying to finish a game with a buddy, then having to do it again on your end since you need to kill the boss in your own world too, is very, very annoying. And after a while, I just decided it was too much of a hassle and stopped playing like this altogether. Having to look for the sign has been an insane time waster, especially considering how punishing the games can be at times, where you could do one simple mistake and just fall to your death, or get stuck in a corner and die. Every death is a huge waste of time and becomes annoying, not even fun anymore. While playing Elden Ring, I even thought that this game would definitely fit a more direct online play and should ditch the sign system once and for all. But of course, rewriting the whole network system will take a lot of time and resources, which I'm sure From will not invest in, as many players still play these games solo or offline. That is, until a modder, called UE, released a mod for base Elden Ring, called Elden Ring Seamless Mod. This mod allows a host to open their world to wanderers that can join a specific world if they set a specific password in a .ini file. This mod discards the sign system and allows people to keep playing the game together even if a boss is defeated. This mod received a lot of updates since its release, and while it's still a bit buggy, it now features all the main important online interactions, like invasions, and even adds its own gamey modes, like a boss rush option. What I always say is that Elden Ring by itself is a 9 out of 10 game, but with Seamless it becomes a 12 out of 10. The game is so much more fun played with friends. And Seamless just removes all the issues that the core online play has, makes them better, and adds to the experience. Now you may ask, but what has this to do with Nightreign? Well, Miyazaki was interviewed at one point in 2024 and was asked about the Seamless mod and his opinion on it. He replied, "It's definitely not something we actively oppose or want to downplay, wanting to go through the whole game together. In terms of where we were with Elden Ring, it was simply a case of wanting a more loose, casual style. Drop in, defeat a boss, drop out. It doesn't put any technical restrictions on the player, it just sort of lets them complete this focus and then move on, so to speak. That's not to say we won't consider ideas like that with our future games. With both Nightreign and Duskbloods being developed pretty much hand in hand, and see how they handle online play, it's safe to say Miyazaki and From Software as a whole have embraced the Seamless idea with open arms and is now slowly improving on it through these upcoming titles. Potentially, this means that when we'll get another fully fleshed Soulsborne game, it will have a Seamless-like option for multiplayer, but I'd handle it this way if we want to keep both systems. If you want to play with friends, let them join your world through an invite or through a system similar to the Seamless mod. If you want to play with randoms, you can still use the sign system. It does not remove any option available to the player and still promotes community interactions in case you don't have friends to play with or you want to help other players that you don't share the same password with. Nightreign is the first step to actually improve on it, and I personally love how good it feels to play online with little to no delay between hits. It's a window to a future that I can't wait to see From Software work. But as nothing is perfect, and as much as I think this is probably my game of the year 2025, I still have not played Split Fiction nor Expedition 33, so bear with me, I have just enough time. I can say I found many issues with it. It's far from a perfect game. Going back to the Night Lords topic, they are pain to fight in solo. No matter how much they can try to balance them for solo, they are built for multiplayer and it's just meant to be like that. It's not the game's fault, but I can't imagine going through it in solo, where I go through a 30-minute long run just to end up being stomped and can't really learn the fight because of the huge time gap between tries. Not only that, but the game has all sorts of issues. For once, you get a plethora of emotes that you could use to communicate with your teammates, which is good because you really want to be able to give your teammates information about your next move, or maybe you want to thank them for giving you an item you needed. It does sound great on paper, but in this game, it's either run for the win, or just lose because you spent 10 seconds emoting, or because you fell down a cliff while you were running away from the rain. In that case, you could say, well, just use voice chat. It's an online game that can be played with randoms after all. That would be a good point, if voice chat was a thing in this game. Apparently, an online-mainly game lacks any kind of communication tools, except for pings. Not even a sticker system like Monster Hunter does was implemented, and I feel this game needs something like that to help communicate with random teammates. Otherwise, unless you have a good synergy or teammates that follow your pings, you'll end up in a rough state for the final boss. If you manage to reach it, that is. While we're talking about the multiplayer aspect, why, if we are in the same lobby, we can see each other at the round table hold? This game supports a seamless multiplayer system, and yet at the round table you can't see your teammates. This would be a perfect place and reason to get and use the emotes, more than during the game's actual gameplay. I can kinda understand why, since you'd possibly see doubles of the characters around you, or even of the character you're playing as, but you went your way to make yet another round table, which is different than the one from the previous game, and you allow me to find legendary items like Marika's hammer or the Dragon King's crackblade. You already went all out, might as well do that here too, no? An easy fix that comes to mind that would work perfectly would be to have ghosts of those players running around. Like how you would see other players' ghosts in other Souls games, you would see your partner's ghost running around with no delay and being able to interact with you seamlessly. It's an oversight that I personally don't understand, and it's not the only one either. Speaking of the round table, this huge lobby, with so many characters to interact with. Except for the journal and the little pot friend merchant, there is nothing else to do aside from the training ground. Sure, you can interact with all the Nightfarers and the Iron Manual, but all they say is just generic dialogue that can often be associated to a stereotype based on their class. Like Iron Eye would make puns or hints about his nature as an archer.
Finally, the real thing rears its ugly head. This time we cannot miss our mark.
Or the recluse who would say that she's good at what she does.
I believe myself skilled in my craft.
It's not really a big deal, but you could make it a bit more interesting. Give them some more detailed dialogues from time to time, with a rare interaction option that can occur between expeditions. Or maybe do the same, but have it unlock some sort of extra quest for the next expedition, or would award you a relic with traits good for that Nightfarer. As much as I feel at home, the characters feel more like poles that can say random stuff about themselves, and I think interacting with them after a certain amount of times is just not worth it nor interesting. These characters that have unique personalities and playstyles, as much as I love them and how they've grown on me while doing their remembrances, I can't be objective about their gameplay. Some of them are clearly better thought and are stronger than others. And that is a clear issue when it comes to a team-based game. If your goal is winning, you will always want to pick the stronger characters and not the ones you like to play the most. The recluse has to use FP in order to use her incantations and sorceries, and she also has an absurd S scaling in both faith and intelligence, making her an all-round, always reliable magic caster. In addition to this, the recluse can use her skill to absorb an element from enemies and allies to create a magic cocktail that can cast unique spells depending on which elements she absorbed. She's a bit reliant on the elements the whole team has, but she has something other characters don't. She also recovers FP every time she absorbs an element. Having an infinite source of FP and unique spells based on her magic cocktail, she is more reliable than any other character using FP in the game, and with her S scaling, she is potentially the highest DPS class if mastered correctly. On the other hand, the other main caster of the game, the Revenant, has good abilities for survival and aggro management with her summons and ultimate ability. She also has a great S scaling in Faith, making her a good healer and buffer. However, she has no way to recover FP on her own, even when consuming FP is what she's supposed to be doing for most of the game. This makes her want to save her resources for when they're actually needed, which makes using her being at a disadvantage damage-wise compared to the Recluse. One way me and other people thought would definitely help the Revenant, especially considering how squishy her summons are against the Night Lords, would be to have her replenish some FP when one of her family members dies. It's not a cheesable option, since you need enemies to kill your summons. Summons are pretty hard to be killed by normal enemies, and it really has a bigger impact during boss fights. It will make her way more reliable than what she is now, aggro management aspect aside. Another Nightfarer that could use some tweaking is Executor. Executor? I don't know, English is hard. A samurai with a S scaling in Arcane, which increases bleeding buildup, and is insanely strong with Arcane scaling weapons. By the way, there is no way to see weapon scalings in any way in the game, but it's there because Nightreign is Eldering at the core. But most of his skill set is based on statuses and situations. In order to use his skill properly, he has to block incoming attacks in a Sekiro-like gameplay style, which means waiting, which means losing time in a game where there is barely any second to lose. His ultimate has nothing to do with the rest of the setup, it does not deal damage, it makes the Executor tankier but not immortal, and can be killed easily by some bosses, so he must learn what can kill him easily and avoid transforming at the wrong time. His gameplay is really satisfying, but his learning curve and his core setup go against the whole structure of the game, and honestly, every time I see an Executor online, I just hope they will just go double katana and apply bleed whenever possible. Another complaint is that Night Lords have weaknesses. Caligo is weak against fire, Libra is weak against frenzy, Gladius is weak against holy, and so on. Even if you don't really know how to fight them, if you hit them enough times with their weakness, they'll get a debuff where they inflict less damage and receive more. It really helps making some of the fights way more bearable, giving you a possible edge that will make you win the fight if you're consistent and aggressive. However, it's not always the case. Sometimes you might go against Adel, which is weak against poison, and not get a single poison camp to spawn, which will make the fight borderline unbearable. It's not impossible to find poison stuff without poison camps, not to win without any kind of poison inflicting equipment, but I would expect at least one guaranteed camp to spawn that can help you fight and win against the boss. It's just basic game design. I understand the experimenting with the procedurally generated locations, but I find it to be a bit of a flaw from a design point of view, especially considering that at times you can find way more than 2 camps with the same element on a boss fight that is not weak against it. As much as I love even the issues the game has, because they temper your decision making and gameplay skills, some people will find these frustrating and unfair to deal with most of the time. Finding a balance is hard, and often even big companies struggle to reach a point where a game feels perfect overall. And I am perfectly fine with a game to have little problems that hinder the experience. But I also feel like having to deal with some issues, as long as it's not about bugs or glitches, looking at you, Wending Grace glitch, makes the experience even more enjoyable. If the game is a walk in the park, it will not give me as much dopamine and will not make me want to learn the game, since I wouldn't need it at that point. I experienced Nightreign in multiplayer mostly, as I always found myself frustrated in single player, and most of the time with friends and mutuals in a Discord voice chat, allowing us to communicate quickly where to go next and why. I can't imagine why and how they did not implement more ways of communicating, but as someone who did not have those issues in the first place, I found my 100+ hours on this game more than well invested for my own satisfaction. It's a game that gives and takes. It's pain and pleasure at the same time. It's a bonding experience where everyone is essential and no one is to be left behind. You are struggling together, not alone, and the fight is hard, but your allies will gladly share the burden and bring the fight to the enemies. Even with all the flaws it has, I just can't hate Nightreign, because everything else is studied well and works perfectly with all the changes that are made to the typical Souls formula. Maybe it's because of my love for fast-paced games or roguelikes in general, but even if it does not fit the usual FromSoft fashion, I think it has the chance to be considered one of the best looking and better made roguelites around, something that games like Returnal achieved. Of course, graphics are not everything, as I prefer a well-defined art style over realistic graphics. A good example of this is the Darksiders series, as the first game is 15 years old, but the game still looks stunning today thanks to the amazing art style of Joe Madureira, that has an incredible talent and is a great character designer. Pair that with a responsive and varied gameplay, and you get an ever-aging classic that can be played for years to come that will still amaze people that will experience it for the first time. I feel Nightreign, once polished, will probably be close to a classic, that people will manage to hop in and enjoy a run even after hundreds of hours spent on it. I know I am still playing after 100 runs, and it never bored me once, and I know it still will not for a very long time. This video is a critique and ode to a game that made me connect with a lot more people. People that played Elden Ring back in the day but did not keep playing after finishing it, or people that just enjoy roguelikes in general and wanted to try something different. I have very specific tastes in games. I often call myself the one that likes games only he enjoys, as I always end up liking games only I find enjoyable. Final Fantasy XV, Warcraft 3, Heroes of the Storm, or Soul Calibur, and just played them by myself, ending up losing interest shortly after, even if I spend a lot of time on them and have fun nonetheless. Seeing what Nightreign did to bring so many different people together to play it brought me joy and made me feel part of a group that actually enjoys playing the game, instead of being the usual "I'll just finish it by myself" experience. Maybe I'm just talking to myself at this point, but I wanted to give my 2 cents about the game I deeply care about. Even if it just came out, it managed to hit me deeply, and I wanted to give some of that appreciation back. I know a lot of people will not agree with me, and that is completely fine. As the title suggests, I also think the game is filled with core issues, but it's still a solid experience overall. If you manage to get someone to share your experience with them, laugh at the bugs, and go through the griefing stage of losing a run because a Wending Grace glitched and kicked your teammates out of the lobby, leaving you alone to fight the final boss. I hope you enjoyed the video. This is ODE TV, and I'm out.